There is a village in the Norwegian Arctic built on a rock of 1/10 of a square kilometer. Fewer than 300 people live there. One company on that rock employs well over 100 of them. For 6 weeks every winter, the sun does not come up over it at all. In the village shop, a liter of milk costs about 22 kroner, a block of butter, 70, half a kilo of coffee, close to 140. The electricity is among the cheapest in Europe. A place in the village kindergarten costs 700 kroner a month. 4 out of 5 of the people on that filleting line were born somewhere else. Poland, mostly, and Lithuania. At 16, the children leave, because the nearest upper secondary school is on the mainland, over an hour away, on a road that closes when it snows. The nearest hospital with a surgeon in it is well over 150 kilometers away. None of this is considered remarkable here. It is simply the arrangement. In the far north of Norway, 300 kilometers above the Arctic Circle, where the last of the Scandinavian mainland breaks apart into a scatter of islands and the open Atlantic begins, lies the island that all of it belongs to. This is Senja. Roughly 1,600 square kilometers of granite, bog and birch, the second largest island in the country. A western coast of bare rock standing straight out of deep water, an eastern shore of barns and hay meadows facing the mainland across a narrow strait. In the flat ground between them, at the heads of the fjords and the mouths of the valleys, live about 7,500 people. From villages of 200 and 300, they run one of the largest seafood economies in Norway. This is the story of daily life on Senja. The day on Senja begins in the dark for a great many of its people, and it begins at the water. In the fishing villages of the outer coast, the first shift in the processing plants is walking through the door hours before there is any light to walk in. And on the quay outside, boats that left in the middle of the night are already coming alongside to land what they have caught. The rhythm here is set by the tide, by the weather forecast, and above all, by the season, because there are months when this island works nearly around the clock, and months when it does not. An ordinary week here is quieter than the landscape suggests. On Husoi, a fishing community built on a rock of 1/10 of a square kilometer, the village keeps a genuine midday pause, an hour between 12 and 1, when the shop is shut and the streets are empty. Elsewhere, the pattern is the drive, to the shop, to the school, to the doctor, to the sports hall, along a single road that hugs the shoreline all the way. What holds all of this together is not the municipality. Across Senja and the mainland parishes beside it, there are something like 320 clubs and associations, more than 50 sports clubs, and nearly 60 local halls and community houses that are owned and run by the people who use them. Behind that stands one word: dugnad, unpaid collective work done by a community for itself, a term that comes down from Old Norse, and that Norwegians once voted the single most Norwegian word in their language. The ski trails alone cost well over 1 million kroner a year to keep open, once machinery, fuel, and volunteered hours are counted honestly. It is a system that works only as long as enough people are willing to be counted, and everyone in a village of 250 knows precisely who those people are. Identity on Senja is older than the road that reaches it. Long before the fish plants and the bridge. The coastal Sami lived along these fjords by exactly the combination the island still runs on: a boat, a few animals, and whatever the shore would give. Their presence has not disappeared. In the valley of Kappadalen, at the edge of what is now Onderdalen National Park, stand two abandoned settlements that are among the best preserved of their kind anywhere in Norway, and the park's own protection statute names Sami cultural heritage as one of the things it exists to defend. Reindeer still calve inside its boundary every spring. 210 people in this municipality are registered on the Sami electoral roll. The municipality is candid about what was lost. Its own planning documents describe local knowledge of the Sami foundation of Senja as fragmented and incomplete, the result of a century in which claiming the heritage cost you something. The other inheritance is the way people speak. The island has its own dialect, Senja, and its boundaries are drawn so tightly that they run down the middle of the strait. On Senja, people say dem for they. On the mainland side of the same municipality, they say di. The vocabulary that survives in the old word lists is the vocabulary of a working coast. There is a word, blind man, for the man who decides how a catch is divided between the crew. There is a word, botakta, for a single small fish left forgotten in the bottom of a boat. It is a language built by people who needed to be precise about very few things and completely precise about those. Almost everything on Senja comes out of the water. 3/5 of all industrial employment in the municipality is food processing. And food processing here means fish, cod, scythe, haddock, halibut, shrimp, and above all, salmon. The consequence is a set of numbers that should not be possible in places this small. On Husøy, that 1/10 of a square kilometer of rock, home to fewer than 300 people, a single-family firm founded in the 1930s employs well over 100 people at its address on the island and turns over some 600 million kroner a year across the group. In Senja, a village of about 250, the plant runs on 80 people year-round and takes on up to 150 at the height of the season. 4 out of 5 of those workers are foreign, most of them Polish and Lithuanian. On the eastern side of the island, a salmon harvesting and filleting plant opened with 135 jobs and drew close to 1,000 applications for them. In Torsken, a village of roughly 220 souls, one salmon company has put something in the order of 130 million kroner into the place, including a substantial sum spent simply on building houses for its own employees. The engine of the whole year is a fish that does not live here. Skrei, the great Arctic cod that matures in the Barents Sea and swims more than 1,000 kilometers south each winter to spawn along this coast, arrives in January and is gone by April. In those months, the harbor at Husøy alone takes in something close to 7,000 tons. The village works at a pitch it cannot hold for the rest of the year, and every spare bed is spoken for. Then it stops, and the island holds its breath until the salmon and the summer fisheries take over. A great deal of effort now goes into flattening that curve. Farmed cod, new processing lines, year-round contracts, because no village can raise children on 4 months of work, and because the seasonal workers who once went home in April increasingly do not. They register with a doctor, enroll children in the village school, and become the reason the village school is still open. The rest of the work is what a Norwegian community always has: the municipality itself, which employs more people than any private company on the island, along with the schools, the nursing homes, the graphite works, the farms on the eastern shore, and a tourism industry that barely existed a generation ago. And there is one figure that quietly reverses the story people expect of a remote northern island. More people commute into this municipality every morning than commute out of it. This is a place that quietly imports labor and has for 2 decades. The wage on Senja is high, and so is nearly everything it is spent on. The average full-time salary in Norway now runs to something over 60,000 kroner a month before tax, and the floor rate for a skilled worker on a processing line is fixed by national agreement at around 240 kroner an hour. Against that sits a food bill that runs roughly a third higher than the European average. In practice, that means 60 to 70 kroner for a dozen eggs. Every village on the island has kept its shop: on Husøy, in Senja, in Grillefjord, in Botnham, in Fjordgård. None of them is a discount chain, because a discount chain cannot survive on 200 customers, and their shelf prices run higher again. So, the weekly big shop is a drive to the eastern end of the island or across to the mainland, and the village shop is where the milk and the forgotten things come from, at a price everyone accepts without comment. Housing is where the arithmetic turns in the islanders' favor, and then turns again. Property here costs around 29,000 kroner a square meter. In Tromsø, up the coast, it is more than double that, and in Oslo, more than triple. A detached house on Senja is cheaper still. Electricity in northern Norway is a genuine outlier, the cheapest of the country's price zones by a wide margin, at a small fraction of what households in the south pay. And because of a rule dating back to the late 1960s, household power in this part of Norway carries no value-added tax at all. Petrol runs to around 20 kroner a litre, and a car is not optional. 19 out of every 20 new cars sold in Norway are now electric, and Senja is no exception, though the Arctic exacts a toll on them. In national winter testing, at temperatures down to 30 below, electric cars lost well over a third of their advertised range. A kindergarten place costs 700 kroner a month here, a reduced district rate. A visit to the doctor costs 179, and once a household has paid a little over 3,000 in a calendar year, everything after it is free. Every child brings its parents just over 2,000 kroner a month until the age of 18, and a new baby brings its mother and father 49 weeks of leave between them at full pay. In a village of 200, those two facts are the difference between a school with children in it and a school without. Senja food is a direct and honest reflection of the sea it comes out of. Plain, cold water, seasonal, and wholly unsentimental. In the Skray months, the fish is on the table constantly, poached and eaten with potatoes and with the liver and the roe served alongside, the parts of the animal that a coastal household would never have considered discarding. On this coast is also its oldest export. Turfisk, stockfish, is cod split along the backbone and hung on wooden racks called yell to dry in nothing but cold air and wind for 2 months or 4, depending on what the weather does. Left up for a fortnight, Rather than months, the same fish becomes boknafisk, half-dried and eaten as a winter dish. Nothing is added to it. Nothing is taken away. The wind and the cold do the whole of the work. By the 14th century, dried fish of exactly this kind made up the overwhelming majority of everything Norway sold to the rest of the world, and the racks standing empty on a Senja hillside in September are the last working remnant of that trade. Around it sits the rest: potatoes, flatbread, lamb in the autumn, cloudberries picked off the bogs in a short and jealously guarded season. A shared meal, made of things caught, raised, or gathered within sight of the house, remains the truest and most authentic taste of this island. To truly understand Senja is to understand that it is two coasts. The western side is the one that gets photographed. Segla, rising from the water in a single unbroken wall. Brittenden, 1,000 meters above the fjords. The eastern side is where most people live, and it is a landscape of an entirely different temperament. Sheltered, farmed, forested, and mild. Between the two lies Onderdalen National Park, protected since the beginning of the 1970s. 130 square kilometers of coastal pine forest in which individual trees have been standing for 500 and 600 years. It has been worked for as long as people have lived here. A reindeer grazing ground, a carving area, a place whose paths were worn by people who needed them. Threaded between the two coasts runs a 100-kilometer stretch of designated National Tourist Road, from Bottenham Round to Grillefjord, with viewing platforms bolted to the rock at Tungeneset and Bergsbotn, and a white sand beach at Ersfjord that has needed a service building of its own to cope with the numbers now arriving. What the outdoors means here is best carried by a Norwegian word that has no clean English equivalent: friluftsliv, open-air life. The assumption that time spent outside is not recreation, but simply part of being a person. It is the springy give of moss underfoot, the smell of wet birch after rain, the shock of water at a beach where the sea never really warms. None of it requires equipment, permission, or a plan. It is simply what an evening is for, and the evening in question is as likely to be a Wednesday in October as a Saturday in July. Everything that leaves Senja leaves over a single bridge. Since the early 1970s, the island has been joined to the mainland at Silsand by the Gisund Bridge, 1,100 meters of concrete on 25 spans, and it now carries well over 10,000 vehicles a day. In the depths of the winter fishing season, among them are up to 150 lorries hauling out fish that must reach a market fresh. There is no second crossing. If that bridge were to close, the way round is more than 200 kilometers and over 4 hours by ferry and road, which is why a structure built for a quieter island is now the single most closely watched object in the municipality. On the far side of it stands Finnsnes, the administrative center of a municipality named after an island on which Finnsnes does not stand. Finnsnes is on the mainland. That is where the upper secondary school is, and the district medical center, and the shops that sell anything the village shops do not. Getting to it is the daily fact of life out on the western coast. The outer road threads the shoreline through tunnels driven in the 1970s, and in places it runs directly beneath slopes that shed snow. Avalanche shelters have been built over the most exposed stretches. Forecasts are published daily through the winter, and the road still closes. From Silsand, Finnsnes is 8 minutes away. From Botnham or Grillefjord, it is over an hour. From Fjordgård, nearer 80 minutes. On a road that in January is a different road entirely. There are 2 ways off Senja that do not use the bridge, and both of them are boats. From Botnham, a ferry crosses to the island of Kvaløya in 45 minutes, all year round, halving the drive to Tromsø. From Grillefjord, in summer only, another runs south to Andens, in the Vesterålen Islands, and when it is running, the queue for it backs up through the village. The same distances govern everything else. Doctors' surgeries open daily at Silsand and Finnsnes, but the branch surgeries at Skaland, Grillefjord, Zifjord, and Stonglandseidet open 1 or 2 days a week. Finnsnes has a midwife-led maternity unit, X-ray and dialysis. The nearest full hospital is in Tromsø, 160 kilometers, and the better part of 3 hours by road, or an hour and a quarter by express boat. For anything that cannot wait, the answer is a helicopter. And yet every single settlement on this island now has a road connection that does not require a boat. That sentence contains the whole of the 20th century here. The island can hold a childhood without difficulty. Holding a 16-year-old is where it becomes hard. The municipality runs 14 schools, and several of them are small village schools taking children the whole way from the first year to the 10th. At Husøy, Botnham, Grillefjord, Senjahopen, Stonglandseidet, with 2 independent Montessori schools at Fjordgård and Skaland besides. A child on the outer coast can be educated within a few minutes of home for a decade. Then upper secondary arrives, and every route to it now crosses the bridge, to Finnfjordbotn on the mainland and to Gibostad, where an agricultural school has taught the working of land and sea since before the First World War. Both campuses run boarding houses, and Gibostad alone holds around 70 rooms, because for a family in Grillefjord or Fjordgård, a daily commute of 80 minutes each way through an Arctic winter is not a serious proposition. At 16, the children leave. This period away from home is a modern rite of passage, and for a good number of them, it does not end at 18. It continues to Tromsø, to a degree, to a city. What decides whether they come back is housing. In the outer villages, a house that costs 6 million kroner to build has been valued by the bank at half that, because the bank is lending against a market of 200 people, and no private buyer can bridge a gap of that size. The result has been that companies have had to become house builders in order to house their own staff. The municipality has been swamped with applications for first home loans it cannot fully meet, and a dedicated pilot scheme has been set up specifically to get houses built in the districts where the value is actually created. There is work here for everyone who wants it. The obstacle is a roof. And still, in a normal year, slightly more people move into this municipality than leave it. The margin is thin, a few dozen, but it has held. The rhythm of day and night on Senja is a study in stark and beautiful contrasts, a rhythm dictated absolutely by the latitude. From the end of November until the middle of January, the sun does not rise on the outer coast at all. This is Mørketid, the dark time, and it lasts between 6 and 7 weeks. Darkness is the wrong word for it. At midday, in late December, the sun sits only about 3 degrees below the horizon, and what it produces is one of the strangest lights on Earth. 4 or 5 hours in which the snow, the sea, the mountains and the sky all turn the same saturated blue, bright enough to walk in, too dim to cast a shadow. School runs happen in it, football training happens in it, and overhead, on any clear night of that season, there is the aurora. Senja lies directly beneath the band, where the northern lights appear on more than half of all clear nights, which makes them, for the people who live here, less an event than a weather condition, noticed through a kitchen window, remarked on, and then left to get on with itself while the washing up is finished. And when the sun finally does come back, the whole of northern Norway marks the day it returns, with buns baked for the occasion and coffee drunk outdoors facing it. And in a village standing under a mountain wall, like Fjordgård, everyone waits several days longer than the calendar says, because the mountain gets there first. Then the year turns completely over. From the 3rd week of May until the last week of July, the sun does not set. At 1 o'clock in the morning in June, it is still hanging a few degrees above the sea, and the island becomes almost unrecognizable. Boats out at midnight, lawns cut at 11, children who cannot be persuaded that it is bedtime, and adults who quietly stop sleeping properly for 2 months. The temperature, meanwhile, is the great surprise of the place. The Atlantic keeps this coast extraordinarily mild for its position. The coldest month, at the seaward end of Senja, averages barely a degree below freezing. 90 kilometers inland, over the mountains, the same month averages 10 degrees colder and has recorded nearly 40 below. The sea gives this island a mild winter and takes the daylight in exchange. The difficulties on Senja are not dramatic ones, and that is precisely what makes them serious. Last year, the municipality recorded 116 births against 153 deaths. 1 resident in 5 is already over 67, and the number of people over 80 is projected to double within a generation, in a place where the working-age population is shrinking at the same time. The municipality has begun a restructuring program intended to take 100 million kroner out of its annual running costs, and every one of those kroner is attached to something in a village. The industry that pays for all of it faces its own arithmetic. Scientific advice for the coming cod quota came in more than a fifth lower than the year before, the lowest in over 2 decades. And tourism, which has doubled its value here in a decade and brings real money into villages that need it, has arrived faster than the roads, the car parks, and the lavatories could be built. Roughly half the residents surveyed welcome it. A third do not. Yet the response to every one of these things has been the same, and it is characteristic. Toilets and paths and parking have been built at the pressure points. 2 village schools, recommended for closure, were kept open by a council that decided the saving was not worth the village. Companies build houses. Volunteers groom the trails. How does an island of 7,000 people hold on to a workforce it does not produce? How does it take in 100,000 overnight visitors a season without becoming a place its own residents avoid in July? How does a community keep a school, a shop, and a quay running when the arithmetic says it should not? These are the questions the people of Senja work on, patiently, every single year. Senja exists in a delicate, constantly negotiated balance between the ocean that pays for everything and the ocean that takes people away, between the 6 weeks of dark and the 10 weeks of light, between the ones who leave at 16 and the ones who come back at 30 with children of their own. Here, life is measured by its depth rather than by its ease, in the steady, dependable rhythm of a working coast, in a village hall lit on a Wednesday evening, in the certainty that the fish will come again in January. It is a living testament to the idea that a place does not need to be easy, or large, or warm in order to be worth the whole of a life.